And Mr. Dowdy, we are ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the District 225 Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Dowdy.
Here.
Mr. Glowacki.
Present.
Ms. Mullenbeck. Here. Mr. O'Hara.
Here.
Ms. Siegwin.
Here.
Mr. Schein. Dr. Steinberg.
Here.
6 members present.
Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda is to have a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Good evening, everybody. We welcome everyone tonight to tonight's meeting, which is our first one of second semester. We're off and running after a very successful first semester. It's very exciting. This evening, we have a full agenda. We will be opening with our board and superintendent reports, followed by community comment and our consent agenda. Then we'll have 4 items on our regular agenda: a strategic plan update, a status of our board directives. We'll be considering the District 34 True North withdrawal, and we will finish up our regular agenda with an enrollment forecast update. We now turn to item 3 on our agenda, which is our board and superintendent reports. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I want to point out that we've made a change in our structure of board meetings and our agenda. So before going into public comment, we do our board and superintendent reports. And this evening, we have a very exciting start to this new change on our agenda. Dr. Gravel is going to update us on some wonderful developments in our district. Dr. Gravel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johns and members of the board. Over the last 2 months, I've had the incredible honor of meeting with so many students, parents, and staff members as I prepare to assume the superintendency in July. Through these conversations, I have been continually inspired by the many stories and accomplishments that reflect the heart of our community. Each interaction, whether in person, through an email, or yes, even through an Instagram comment, has reminded me of the importance of celebrating the individuals who make our schools truly exceptional. Recognizing those who embody our core values, excellence in learning, belonging, respect, responsibility, and well-being, not only honors their contributions, but also inspires so many to get involved. These individuals serve as role models, demonstrating that the Glenbrooks is truly more than a slogan. It's an educational community where meaningful connections are built and everyone feels valued. To that end, I'm thrilled to follow up with a comment that Dr. Johns meant that our board agenda is going to start looking just a little different. Beginning this evening and continuing at future board meetings, we're going to take time after the approval of the agenda to spotlight and celebrate the achievements of our students, our families, and our staff. This recognition will highlight how the extraordinary work that's truly happening across the 4 A's of academics, activities, athletics, and the arts aligns with the essential work of the Board of Education. My hope is that this time on the agenda becomes the most exciting time and truly centers the work that we do with the board, with the reminder that students are at the heart of every single thing that we do. As we get started tonight, I'm excited to use this opportunity to announce the recruitment of 3 exceptional leaders who will join us in our mission to inspire each learner in our school district. Each of these individuals has demonstrated outstanding expertise in their respective fields and have undergone a rigorous, inclusive interview process that welcomed input from all stakeholders. I am grateful to Dr. Georges and Mrs. Hughes and the work of their staff for reviewing applications, participating in several rounds of interviews, and ultimately making a recommendation to Dr. Johns and myself. And at this time, without further ado, I welcome Mrs. Hughes to share 2 very exciting appointments. And just an early preview. After Mrs. Hughes announces each candidate, they're going to proceed around. We're going to recognize them, and they're going to have an opportunity to just have a small interaction with each board member and members of the cabinet.
All right, good evening. So I'm going to start with our Associate Principal of Teaching and Learning. So I am thrilled to introduce Dr. Maria Vasilopoulos as our next Associate Principal of Teaching and Learning. Maria holds a doctorate in curriculum instruction and educational psychology from Loyola University, a Master of Science in School Administration from Northwestern University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics from Northwestern University. She holds teaching certifications in mathematics, chemistry, and school administration, reflecting her diverse expertise and commitment to educational excellence. Maria is a dedicated, accomplished, and respected member of the Glenbrook North High School Mathematics Department. Throughout her tenure, she has held key leadership roles, including Mathematics Department Chair at Loyola Academy, Mathematics Division Head in Barrington, and currently Mathematics Instructional Supervisor at GBN. In her current role, she oversees curriculum designs, assessments, and staff development for our math department of more than 20 educators, also including coordinating the Math Enrichment Center and Classroom Assistant Program. Maria also coordinates frequently with our township districts for professional development and articulation. Dr. Vasilopoulos is an active leader in the mathematics education community, serving as the president of the North Shore Mathematics Council, and has shared her expertise as a speaker at several national conferences. She embodies a passion for education beyond the classroom, having served as a school board member for District 31 and as an adjunct faculty member for National Louis, a field supervisor at National Louis and Northwestern, and as a dedicated Girl Scout troop leader for her daughters, Avery and Jamie, who are here tonight, along with her husband, Opie. On a personal note, I have been impressed not only with Maria's leadership, authenticity, and expertise, but also her genuine kindness and attention to supporting colleagues, teachers, students, and families. I am confident in Maria's ability to lead our instructional leadership team during our time of innovation and growth, all while supporting our Spartan culture of excellence and support. Congratulations to Maria. All right, thank you. And also, now I'd like to welcome our new Assistant Principal of Athletics. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Molly Tomlinson to our staff as the next Assistant Principal for Athletics. Mrs. Tomlinson is a highly respected leader in the athletic director community and brings with her a range of teaching, activity, and athletic experiences. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English Secondary Education from Muskingum University and a Master of Arts degree in Educational Leadership from the American College of Education. Molly began her career as an English teacher at Grayslake North High School and quickly demonstrated her passion for student engagement by also serving as the activity director for 8 years. In 2020, she was named the Assistant Athletic Director at Deerfield High School and hit the ground running, drawing on her time in the classroom, student activities, and as a 3-season athlete and coach herself. Molly's passion for athletics and education has inspired her to create innovative programming and opportunities for student athletes and coaches that have quickly made a mark in her current school. She connects stakeholders across all sports with work on initiatives such as Hall of Fame celebrations and school-wide communications to promote athletics and student accomplishments. Molly is active within the Central Suburban League and Illinois Athletic Directors Association, including presenting sessions at conferences, contributing to athletic director podcasts, and has been the visionary behind an upcoming conference entitled the Empower Her Conference that will serve nearly 700 female student athletes across the Chicagoland area, featuring breakout sessions and a keynote speaker of an Olympic athlete. In addition to creating this experience for students, Molly has facilitated a strong team of fellow athletic directors and coaches who have worked together to make this event possible, demonstrating her commitment to collaboration. She radiates positivity and optimism and works tirelessly to create an inclusive and inspiring experience for her students and coaches alike. We also wanted to recognize Molly's family, her husband Jason and sons Braden and Lucas, who couldn't be here tonight as they are at their own athletic practices. We are excited to have Molly join the Spartan team, continue our traditions of excellence, and push us forward to new heights. Welcome, Molly.
Chris. Well, we're just going to keep this fun evening rolling. I have tremendous pride and excitement to be able to announce Miss Amanda Moritz as our next instructional supervisor of world languages at Glenbrook South. First of all, everyone needs to understand Amanda was the unanimous finalist amongst all of the round 2 participants. So I want her to understand the confidence that she has coming from her interview committee. Amanda has demonstrated profound preparedness for this leadership role in both her formal education and her work experience. Amanda earned her Bachelor's of Arts degree in teaching in teaching of French from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a Master of Arts in the teaching of French from Southern Oregon University, and a Master's of Education in Educational Leadership from the American College of Education. Prior to joining the Glenbrooks in 2015, Ms. Moritz taught French at Zion Benton High Schools, and upon her arrivals at the Glenbrooks, she first served our community at GBN prior to her current position as a French teacher at Glenbrook South, where she has also been a club sponsor and a volunteer coach. After arriving at Glenbrook South, Amanda very quickly earned the respect of her colleagues in the World Languages Department. She is the model of approachability, thoughtfulness, and professionalism in all of her daily interactions with students, parents, and peers. She models best practice for teaching and learning. She is committed to the ongoing growth of herself and her peers as an educator. Amanda's shown leadership within the department's horizontal and vertical realignment work, and she consistently rolls up her sleeve to support the data management and processes involved with our Seal of Biliteracy program that has grown exponentially at Glenbrook South in the past few years. Beyond the World Languages Department, she also contributes to the data team of the Professional Learning Committee that directs professional development at GBS. In addition to all of the ways that she cares for the students and staff of Glenbrook South, Ms. Moritz is also a leader in the profession. She has presented both at state and national conferences on curriculum development and best practices for world language instruction. I am so looking forward to seeing what the future holds for the World Languages Department under Amanda's leadership. As we face new adventures in the next few years, I'm confident in her ability to challenge the status quo and lead the department into the future with the same innovative spirit that has made Glenbrook South World Languages a model of best practice and excellence for over a decade. Please welcome Amanda.
So again, can we give one more round of applause of congratulations to Maria, Molly, and Amanda? Now, this will also be an important part that will add to this section of the meeting. Thank you all for coming and your families. This is an opportunity if you'd like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you are welcome to do so. If not, this is a okay time to go celebrate with your families, and thank you for being here.
Okay, Dr. Johns. That
So
was lovely.
we're going to proceed next. First of all, thank you, Dr. Gavell. Appreciate having celebrations, get our meeting started off on such a upbeat note. And continuing in that, we'd like to have updates from our buildings. We'll begin with Mrs. Hughes. No, Dr. Georges. They switch on purpose just to
I'm messing with it.
mess with me.
Good evening, good evening. Well, I would like to start this evening by sharing the amazing news that GBS math teacher John O'Malley has earned the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. This prestigious award is administered by the National Science Foundation on behalf of the White House Office of Science and Technology. This award recognizes outstanding teachers for their contributions to the teaching and learning of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Each awardee has received a certificate signed by former President Biden, and they will be traveling to Washington, D.C. for an award ceremony later this year. If you have not had the absolute joy of meeting Mr. O'Malley, I hope you have that experience soon. He is truly unique, and his energy is unsurpassed of any other teacher you've ever met. So this is truly very, very well deserved, and we are incredibly proud of him. In athletics, Ermin Ertanasan and Jacob Shamoun both placed first in each of their divisions at the CSL Boys Wrestling Conference Tournament. Our girls basketball team beat GBN and East Charles and St. Charles East, and girls gymnastics swept Maine South. And Friday night, if you were at the Dome, it was an incredible boys basketball game. GBS did beat GBN. Sorry about that, Ms. Hughes. But it was a fantastic crosstown game. Dome was packed. Junior Titans was out. There was just nothing that could match the energy of Friday night. So it was a great, great game. Over in activities and sort of athletics too. Uh-oh, where'd Palms go? Uh-oh, I'm out of order, friends. Don't know where Palms went. Well, our Palms team, who is part of the year their athletics and part of the year their activities, they're going to state next weekend. So our varsity Palms placed among the top 6 teams at sectionals on Saturday at Libertyville High School. The team performed their jazz routine, and they're moving on to the IHSA state finals in Bloomington this weekend. So Friday morning, girls will have a send-off at GBS so we can get them on the bus and cheer them on and wish them luck. I don't know. Well, there's Palms. They're really adorable, and they have their little state plaque there. Okay, let's go back to academics for a moment. Lots of pictures. I'm sorry they're so small. I had 20 more I could have shared. Saturday morning, we had 245 eighth graders at GBS. It was a very special morning of trying to get our eighth graders around the building for our electives workshops. This event is a follow-up activity to our incoming eighth grade night that we had spoken about at the last board meeting. The intention of this morning is to help our students select electives prior to their course selection meetings with their school counselors that are coming up. It was incredibly wonderful. We hosted 2 different sessions, an hour long each, where students could select a variety of options. We had some makerspace. You can see Mr. Cindy in the makerspace doing Project Lead the Way. We had our business activities doing a Shark Tank activity. You can see the kids through art are in our photo shop with Miss Elliott. They were in the wood shop, the foods lab, journalism, all over the place. We even had them in to do some practice debate. So it was a really, really lovely morning. The kids were energized. They were all walking out at the end of the day very confident in which electives they were going to sign up to take freshman year. So it was a really, really lovely morning. It was a very busy day at GBS on Saturday. We also had mock trial. This kicked off our competition season with a friendly scrimmage against Libertyville High School. We have a very full season, but the students have been working very hard preparing all of their criminal cases for the past 3 months. With each round of competition, they'll continue to hone their skills and hopefully earn the recognition in the state tournament in Springfield. It was so incredibly joyful to watch them out in the hallways talking to themselves, preparing their cross-examinations. It was joyful. And then finally, there's our Palms again. In arts, the Glenbrooks, both GBS and GBN, are heading to ILMEA. Each year, music students across the state of Illinois audition for selection to the Illinois All-State Conference. Glenbrook North and Glenbrook South are proud to share that 8 students from District 225 were selected to perform at the All-State bands, choirs, and orchestras. So this week, January 30th to Feb 1st, they will be at ILMEA, and it will culminate with the all-state performances on February 1st. And with that, I will pass it over to Ms. Hughes. Thank you.
Yes, we are really proud of our ILMEA participants and wish them the very best this weekend. In academics and also in student life, I wanted to highlight one of our juniors, Lillian Huang, who was just selected to be a part of a mental health board entitled the Creative Visions Youth Advisory Council. Creative Visions selected 17 passionate student leaders nationwide to join this Youth Advisory Council, recognizing their dedication to improving youth mental health. Lillian is passionate about destigmatizing mental health and helping her peers sustain positive mental health, whether some of those challenges might relate to stress from global issues or rigorous daily routines. So she's working on some projects that we'll see the outcomes of at GBN. We are excited to send off our boys bowling team to the IHSA state tournament this week. It will be held at St. Clair Bowl, which is all the way down near St. Louis this Thursday. They took third at sectionals this past weekend. Our wrestling team also celebrated great success this weekend of our boys and girls teams with a combined 7 placers and 3 champs at conference. In our activities and also again in student life, we received word that Owen High School, which was the high school that was the recipient of our fundraiser that you might remember talking about before, they've received our donations, our banner, and the wristbands of support. And they shared this photo back with us of their own students in front of the banner hanging at their school. The administration from Owen High School has expressed appreciation for the immense support and is working on memorializing this partnership in their yearbook for this year. And finally, the world of activities is busy with preparations for 55 students qualifying for DECA State. Our math team is gearing up for the end of the season competitions, and our speech team achieved success at Downers Grove this weekend. And as a school, we are preparing for our annual Loyalty Day celebration at GBN this Friday. So that's the news from the Spartans.
Principals, thank you for the updates and the great work that's being done by your students and of course the staff that lead them. I have one update. You may or may not know, but there is a league, statewide league for athletes who receive services through special education. And we have virtually all the sports that are available we host in our district. And it's led by Mr. Paul Joshi, who is one of the teachers over at Glenbrook off campus. And Paul shared some great news with us last week in postseason play or regular season play. He let us know and asked us to extend congratulations to 4 different, we call it the Glenbrook United Wolves teams that won area gold in each division in basketball. So both girls and boys won the low division. The boys got gold in the medium division. The boys won blue in the high division for making a very special year for all 4 of these particular teams. All 4 of these teams are going to qualify to go to state on March 7th through 9th in Bloomington. This is an incredible feat for our program. It's the first time that all 4 teams have made it to state. We're really proud of them and really want to thank Paul for the time and effort he gives up for these kids because it really does make a difference. So that's with the good news. I want to do a bit of a community update because there's been some concerns in our community, very real concerns in our community that I wanted to address. Because we've fielded several inquiries about the district's role in enforcing immigration laws. Reports in the news and social media about potential changes to federal immigration policy have understandably caused fear and concern among members of our community. As everyone knows, this is a fluid situation with frequent changes in the landscape. We are aware of these concerns and are monitoring developments very closely, and we are constantly coordinating with our legal counsel. Additionally, we are in communication with other area districts to share information regarding different approaches to supporting our students. Several of our core values come into play in this situation. For example, with the belonging core value, we state we are an education community where differences are embraced, connections are meaningful, and students, staff, members, and families feel valued. Additionally is our well-being core value, where we prioritize the holistic well-being of our students, and we hold fast to these values. To date, with key staff, we have reiterated our procedures for interactions with law enforcement, the release of student data, and available information regarding resources for families. Members of our staff have been working with concerned students and their families on an individual basis as they have actively sought out our assistance. Pertinent resources are available in our school community resources pages. Students and families can reach out to counselors or a member of the administration for assistance. I would like to remind families of the importance of updating emergency contact information. This can be done by accessing our Update Student Information form that's in PowerSchool. Currently, there are several laws that come into play with this situation. To begin with, it has been established that public schools must educate all students regardless of immigration status. Secondly, schools are prohibited from collecting data on student immigration status. And finally, law enforcement officials must present proper documentation before accessing school premises, obtaining student information, or interacting with students. As a unit of government that creates rules and expectations while adhering to local, state, and federal laws, will follow the laws. Should agencies come to our campus, our staff know that Dr. Gravel or I will be immediately informed, review the documentation with our legal counsel, ensure that the paperwork is appropriate, and follow the legal requirements. Our school leadership teams know these requirements and will work directly with the superintendent's office and legal counsel to address unique circumstances. We will address any possible interactions on a case-by-case basis. As indicated at the beginning of these remarks, we are monitoring developments closely, and we are working with our counsel to ensure that we take appropriate legal steps as this dynamic situation evolves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Johns. Thank you, principals, for your report. And I appreciate particularly the words on this situation. It's important for our community to be informed and to know that our district is watching these critical issues very carefully. It brings into play multiple important principles for us. One cardinal principle is, of course, we follow the law. That's what we do. At the same time, we support our students wherever they are, however they are, whatever challenges they're facing, whether it's challenges connected to what you were addressing with immigration, Dr. Johns, or other challenges that come up in their lives from time to time. Our schools for decades have been supporting students. It is one of our core values, and it is central to our strategic plan. We know we're not a political forum here, but we also know that politics and events around us do affect us. And that's why we need to be diligent in staying informed and trying to keep our communities and families informed as well. When issues do come up, we are careful to consider them. We seek input, we listen, we share. And we forge consensus wherever we can, sometimes with compromise, but that's healthy. That's a community working together. We may not always agree. We've faced many issues over the years. I've been up here for a number of years, and the many issues can be contentious, difficult, and not fully agreed upon, but we find a way through it together. And we'll be continuing to do that with these issues, watching them as carefully as possible and being supportive as we can of our students while following obviously our legal requirements as we always do. Well, I know you'll keep us updated and our community updated as we go forward with this. It is a fluid situation, as we all know. This is typically a time we ask for any board reports at this point. Any board members want to report on anything at this point?
Just wanted one quick comment and everything. Recently, I had the great opportunity to be with RJ at several of the town hall, parent association meeting, incoming freshman nights, local community groups, and along with Mr. O'Hara and Mr. Shine as well too at some of these events. It was actually, I encourage my fellow colleagues to join those meetings as well too. They're all public on the website. It's a great opportunity to hear from the community what actually is of interest, what is of concern. And what I can say, and RJ, you can correct me if I'm mistaken on this, because I'm synthesizing a bunch of these into 30 seconds or less, but a lot of it is what can the Glenbrooks do to enhance what we're doing? We're on a good track, but what can we do better? What can we do to take things to the next level? We've had a strong track record, but everyone understands the dynamic is different today than it was yesterday. And there's a lot of interesting thoughts on that. And so I know we're having some meetings coming up in the coming weeks and stuff on various issues, from the calendar to variety of other areas, activities and programs that the school offers. So Matt, I didn't know if there was anything else you'd like to add. Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other board members at this point?
I just want to bring something. I know we are not in discussion, but maybe to add to Dr. Charles, the district has a lot of resources to support our students on the mental and health well-being. So on top of everything in terms of supporting legally and making the right things, it's always good to remind our families and districts that students that are suffering anxiety or may have questions about this issue or any other issue that may come, always can go to the district. The principals can go to the schools and get appropriate supporting resources that will deal with that well-being and mental health.
No, that's well said. It's very important. We do that typically remind, I know in the weekly newsletters that Mrs. Hughes and Dr. George has put out, and I'm sure that those will be included this coming Sunday as well. So thank you for the comment. It is very important. Any other board reports? Okay, I will now move to item 4 on our agenda, which is recognition of community visitors. This is an up to 30-minute portion of our meeting. We always value the contributions of our community, which we get during this meeting as well as in between. I do have 4 speakers who are listed here. You're allowed up to 2 minutes to address the board. We ask you to respect that mark as well. We do have your names. If you could give us your addresses, you don't have to, but it does help us with follow-up. We remind people of a number of items. The board does not respond at this point. We listen very carefully. Second, we keep in mind that we maintain confidentiality and privacy. We do not discuss individual employees or students. Please note also the board does not control the topics raised or the substance of public comment. We remind speakers they should direct their comments to the board and they should relate to district business. This is not a political forum. We also remind speakers that their comments are not automatically protected by any immunity or other legal protection. And finally, we ask everyone to maintain civility and respect as they present their comments. So I do have 4 speakers this evening. The first speaker is William, is it Seitz or Seitzer? You're going to tell me when you get up here, I know.
It's Seitz.
Seitz, Mr. Seitz, welcome.
And I'm welcome. Thank you. I do know you, the shot clock you got here, so
That Jumbotron
so
right to you there, I know.
it's a jumbotron. So I gave you a letter so that I can jump right into my 2 topics. So just quickly, I've got 2 topics. They're very large topics, and I talked to the superintendent, so I'm going to follow up with him on the freedom of information issues. On the fiscal impact studies, I do think this board needs to pay close attention to what the Village of Glenview is doing on these projects. They went ahead and approved the Pearson project, and as I showed you in my letter, they contacted you after they already approved it. So I think you need to take it very seriously because those are costs that are directed that when they build these houses, those are costs that you're going to be incurring down the road. So and they've done it to you twice in 1 year, and now across the street Signal, that's going to be another one. And then second, on the school resource officers, just so you know, I don't think you even have a contract because they changed the contract after you approved it in November. So, you know, I think in fact, if you check my resume, I've got some big clients. I've talked to Mayor Johnson. I took police officers out of his schools. I really think you ought to reconsider this whole program. I've talked to District 34 about it. You just restarted it. Can you reconsider it? I really, as explained in my letter, if you're going to do it, pay 100% of the costs. But police officers in schools, you ought to have a public forum. You ought to have a public discussion about that concept. The police, at a public meeting, the police chief of Glenview said that you weren't interested a year ago. I was very surprised that this popped up in December. As I said, they changed the contract so that it was auto renewing. The contract you approved in November was a 1-year contract. And I will continue with District 34 in this to continue to urge you to not renew these contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seitz. Our second speaker tonight is Ishak Lot. Good evening, sir.
Hey, good evening. I was going to make 2 quick comments and hopefully we'll reinforce some of the messages that were stated earlier. On behalf of the Glenbrook Muslim Civic Association, I wanted to thank Mr. Glowacki, Mr. O'Hara, Miss Lisa Kane and Mr. Chang. They were kind enough to show up and responded to our invitation and showed up to our meeting on Saturday. Hopefully your presence was there and reinforced the engagement within our community. It was standing room only. There were a lot of people there that were really interested in wanting to have FaceTime, have an open dialogue. They learned a lot. And I think there was good, open, honest dialogue back and forth. It did reinforce some of the notions that perceptions we've had within our community, and that was sort of testified by one of the parents that mentioned that she had actually removed her children from the schools, just given some of the climate and some of the things that had gone on in the last year. So hopefully opening a dialogue will help mitigate some of those types of feelings and perceptions within the community as a whole, encourage further dialogue moving forward, which we're welcoming as well. The other comment was thank you, Superintendent Johns, for addressing our concerns regarding immigration. That is something that's also priority within our community. I couldn't imagine being a student wondering if your parents are home when you got home. So it's nice that you all are addressing it. Hopefully it is something that we can help work together as a community to help minimize the harm within our student population. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Now we have Lisa Kane. Good evening, Ms. Kane.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kane. I am a teacher, a counselor, and a parent of a District 34 and a District 225 student. It is exactly 1 week ago that President Trump in his inaugural address discussed deporting millions of people. Dr. Johns, I appreciate your statement at the beginning of today's meeting, sharing some of the different policies and things that are happening within District 225. I urge you, I implore you, I beg you as an educator and a school clinician to please take that information that you shared tonight and put it in writing and put it in a statement and send it out to our school community, to our students, to our staff, to our families, and put it onto your website. In a time when families are not going to work, not answering their door, and not sending their children to school for fear of deportation, when we're asking them to self-identify and come forward and say that their family is undocumented and they need help, and we are only giving them help if we know about them, that is simply insufficient. ISB has already issued guidance. Chicago Public Schools has sent out multiple statements, and it's time for District 225 to do the same. I call on District 225 to issue a memo to all students and families explaining the policies and protocols should ICE enter the building. I call on 225 to provide resources such as Know Your Rights cards and family emergency plans that all community can take the necessary steps to protect itself, and to not just do that on the website. The website has 1,000,001 links. It's very hard to navigate for our families, but to put that all in one email, as CPS has done, for example, to make it easy for them to find. And I call on 225 to tell our community that we see you, we care about you, we know this is a scary time, and here's what we're doing to keep you safe. What impacts one of us impacts us all. And if we are truly one community and one Glenbrook, then we need to make sure that we're ensuring that we're protecting the most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Our final speaker this evening is Julian Chang. Mr. Chang, nice to see you.
See you. Thank you. My name is Julian Chang of Glenview, candidate for District 225 School Board. I want to thank this district leadership, district board, and members of the community. I also applaud Dr. Gravel for his engagement with the students and community, as well as the celebration of our students. This district has so much to be proud of, and we should always aim higher. I learned at one of Dr. Gravel's town halls recently that we are currently rated commendable by the Illinois State Board of Education, a recognition of our strengths, but also a call to action, as he shared that it may have impacted student acceptances to elite colleges. We have the potential and responsibility to once again become an exemplary school district, setting a high standard of excellence for our students, families, and educators. Achieving this requires a collective effort. Families and students must collaborate with the district to build a culture of trust, engage with diverse voices, and invest in every student. Having said that, I want to thank the Glenbrook Muslim Civic Association for hosting us on Saturday to meet with nearly 100 community members. I also want to extend my gratitude to Peter Glowacki, Matt O'Hara, Skip Shine, and candidate Lisa Kane for engaging with us, along with State Representative and State Senator Jennifer Gong Gershowitz and Laura Fine. I would also love to connect with other community groups, religious, ethnic, civic, social, and student groups to get an opportunity to listen and understand what they love about the district and what they'd like to improve. This forum would promote a healthy, respectful, and constructive dialogue, ensuring every voice is heard and valued. If you want to connect with me and reach out, please email me at julian@glenbrooks.org. Together, we can elevate our schools, culture, and trust to truly exemplary levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. That concludes our public comment. Thank all of you for coming this evening and sharing. We always appreciate the input and thoughtfulness that goes with that. We move to item 5 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Dr. Johns, do we have any adjustments?
No, everything stands as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda or the motion? Ms. Siegwin, you're just moving your microphone. That was not your hand raising. Okay. Okay, hearing no discussion. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Mr. Doughty.
Yes.
6 members voting yes.
Move to item 6 on our agenda, which is our discussion and action portion of the agenda. We have 4 topics tonight. We begin with an update on our strategic plan. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Doughty. As you and the board and the community know, we spent a better part of last year working on our strategic plan in a highly collaborative manner that pulled together stakeholders from throughout the community to come together to look for core principles, core focus areas and goals that they had for our district. And it was a very valuable process, and really meaningful relationships were developed throughout that time. And then in August, the board approved the bulk of the strategic plan, followed up by the approval of the mission and vision in late October. Fortunately, we began that work really in anticipation, or the work on the strategic plan in anticipation of the board's approval. So last June, the administration took the nominally approved strategic plan, focus areas, and goals, began the work of looking for the initiatives, some that are in place, some that were ready to go, and some that needed to take place in order to accomplish the goals of our strategic plan. And effectively, at the last day for administrators, we came together and kind of primed the pump for other ideas which we can come together on as initiatives and major projects in fulfillment of the plan. We carried this work on into August at our administrative retreat, where we brought together all of our administrators and managers and in small group teams focused around the different focus areas to really look for that work that we needed to consolidate our thoughts on the strategic plan. Since that time, the administrative cabinet have sifted through all that information that was provided by our administrative team. Sometimes we had projects, sometimes we had tasks, sometimes we had grand initiatives, and we sorted through all of that to put together what you have before you in the strategic plan for the major initiatives that are necessary, that we feel are necessary to carry out those goals. And then we apportioned that work and looked for ways of prioritizing it over the next 5 years. As a note of a question that came out, you'll see that we tried to spread out the work over 5 years, and the check boxes for each of those major initiatives or those sub goals, we put down what's checked off in the box are essentially the initiation dates of those major projects. Otherwise, everything would be checked off in year 5, and we're trying to spread activities out across 5 years, just trying to keep the workload balanced across the length of the strategic plan. And we're pretty excited about it. We do know that this is going to have to be fluid. All it takes is one snag in one area and things can change. And we've been experiencing that already. There's things that we discovered during the summer, during the early fall, that have caused us to need to tweak our plans as different things happen. All it takes is, these are schools, things happen that are unexpected, and that may cause us to change our plans. I just want to highlight a couple different areas for now, but the administration is committed to quarterly updates on the strategic plan to keep you abreast of the major work that we're doing in fulfillment of those focus areas. So if you'll look at focus area 1, that's largely academic, and you've been hearing throughout the fall and the winter some of the really tremendous work that's been underway in the fulfillment of this focus area. For example, our work on our curriculum apps, our use of school links, 4-year academic plans, and our process to help families with the career application process were all parts of things that you heard about this fall in fulfillment of our strategic plan. This work really sets the foundation for the next 4 years, and you'll just hear extensions over the work that we've already put in place, maybe some more fluid details on where we're headed with those. If you turn to focus area 2, this is about this is devoted to building meaningful relationships. Under A2 talks about creating opportunities to build relationships with stakeholders. Dr. Gravel is making this really easy for me because you heard from multiple audiences and from yourselves that we are doing really impressive work in this area of spending time with people in the community, hearing them, being in dialogue, sharing our perspectives and learning their perspectives as well, so we can continue the growth and the excellence in this district. If you look under section D, under collaboration around the 4 areas, we've seen tremendous value, and this is a growing area for our district, of cross-district or work that takes place across Willow Road. And this is an area we've grown tremendously with because the projects on our curriculum guide require that we collaborate across the district. That's the strength of this district, and we're finally taking advantage of it and looking for ways we can grow in that area. And we're really starting to understand the value of these shared experiences. Under E, we talk about high quality, diverse, and inclusive staff. We have seen expanded collaboration between HR and communications, making sure that we're advertising, getting our word out there as an attractive district to be a part of. I encourage you to use your LinkedIn accounts to see what's being put out by our HR department. It's really good marketing material and gets people's attention. And I'm sure that will continue to grow. Additionally, we've put together a hiring toolkit so that we have a consistent hiring experience. Sometimes people don't get a job with us that they want the first time around. We want them to come back and apply again. You know, they could be a really good candidate, but not the best candidate. And we want to maximize the experience that our candidates have when they come to see us. We also want the word of mouth. We also want people to say, I didn't get the job, or I did get the job, and it's a really great place to work, and it's a great place to apply. So we're standardizing our hiring practices in fulfillment of the goals under focus area, some of the goals under focus area 2. Just a couple of goals under focus area number 3 I'd like to talk about. One is under C, which is our classroom instructional practices. In March of this year, we're really going to dig into this area with PD under the area of high yield instructional practices, which really has a significant focus on student engagement. So much of what you've heard about so far from our curriculum and instruction department is student planning for academics. You've heard big efforts in curriculum, and now we're moving into some instructional strategies as well. Engagement is absolutely essential for students to truly learn. We're also going to continue doing under D, professional development on tools and resources and extending it into our onboarding process. So as our new employees come to the district, they're brought on board very quickly, not just with building relationships, but also with our instructional practices around our tools and resources. And finally, under focus area 3, draw your attention to technology platforms, where over the next 2 years, we're going to take a deep dive into looking at our platforms that we use throughout the district. You've heard a lot about Panorama and the positive experiences that we're having with Panorama, but we have a whole slew of other tools that we're committed to looking at across the next 2 years. And I'm just going to talk about one item under focus area 4, which is under C. We're returning to the 5 essentials. This has gotten some information tonight as well. We, as part of our work on climate and culture, we moved to I can never remember what this acronym is for. It's the CSCI study. Not going to happen. Collaborative for School Climate something. And you believe me?
We believe you.
I can use this Google machine and find it out. Under CSCI, we had teams of teachers, teams of staff at each building be trained in how to analyze data and around the ideas and concerns of culture and climate. And in that particular tool that we used for 2 years, the training really mirrored that instrument that we used for those 2 years. However, we believe that there's a good enough base of knowledge from that work that our climate and culture teams can now use the 5 essentials data. This is why it's important. The state while it gives us the opportunity to use the CSCI tool for measuring school climate and culture, which is a score that goes on the school report card, they really hate it when districts don't use the 5 essentials. Moving back to the 5 essentials is what we're going to use this year. Historically, we have had low participation in the CSCI, I'm sorry, in any of our climate and culture, even going back to the 5 essentials 4 years ago, and 5 years ago. So we're going to move back. All we need is higher level of participation, and we would have gotten 2.5 points higher in the state's calculation for its ratings on commendable versus exemplary. We believe, a little back of the napkin math, that that's all it would have taken for us to be exemplary. So while we've done a lot of marketing and reminding families in the past to please, and students and staff to take these climate and culture assessments, we're going to triple down this year and try to get those ratios that we need in order to get those 2.5 points, to get the ratings we know our schools deserve. You know, there's multiple rating systems out there about our schools where we're very high. We're just missing some easy points from the state on the school report card. So this is the process I hope to do as we report on the strategic plan, as we pick some high points of work that we're working on over the coming years. This is a massive project, I think, in retrospect, and the conversations we've had probably in the last month at the cabinet table, we probably have more than enough goals. I mean, this is a healthy plan, but I think we can do it. And if not, we'll have great things happen along the way, and we'll reassess that in the next strategic plan. This is the first true strategic planning process that we know of that the district has gone back as far as anyone knows. And so it's a first time. There's growing pains that come with the strategic plan. I'm really proud of the process that led to us getting to this point. Now we need to do the implementation work. But as you've seen, it's already underway, and we're making really good progress on it, particularly in curriculum instruction. I think you'll see some good progress in other places as well very quickly. So with that, the cabinet and I are open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. Thank you for the report. Thank you to everyone in this room and those outside this room who are working so hard on this, as well as everything else on their plate. It's much, much appreciated. Board members, any questions at this point? Ms. Mullenbeck, you have that look on your face.
Not so much a question, but more of a comment. It's a really useful organizing document. And I just want to encourage, as we go through this process, you know, we've got it all laid out for the 5 years and where things will be started and what the points of focus will be during those 5 years. But I would like to see it be a living document in that as things are, you know, a lot of these goals are identify opportunities, for example, or, you know, thus and such, to put some flesh on the bones, basically, so that as each iteration of this, we're seeing, okay, during this time period, we worked on these things. This is what we learned. This is what we're putting into process. This is where we are. Because some of these are quite specific about, you know, like the communications committee, for example, which I'm on, and I know we're doing a lot, and that's terrific. But then some of them are more aspirational and don't have a whole lot of detail as to what is, I mean, there's the goal, but the getting there is not quite as fleshed out. So to the extent that we're identifying what we're doing, put it in there, let people see it.
And I think we're working along those lines on a web tool
Yes.
to do that. And people do this, we do this, people do with projects when they're doing a construction project, you see all the goals go along. It's a corporate tool. So thank you. Other questions or comments? Dr. Steinberg?
I have a comment similar to Ms. Mullenbeck, and this is what we do, or we used to do at least at Northeastern with our strategic plan, which is during break, which in our case would be the summer, each area will put a list of things that it's planning for the following year, and where does it follow for the strategic plan. So I was reading here, you have tons of checkboxes. It says, teachers and administrators will review course offerings and in partnership with institutions of higher ed seeks to expand dual. Well, maybe there's already a department who's trying to do this. So there's no harm, back to her point, if we're gonna put it on a website or anything, just put a list of what's our aspiration for the next year and where those aspirations line up with the strategic plan. And then you can review it at the end of the year and say, yeah, we were very ambitious. We proposed 200 things when you look at the two schools, and we were successful on 50. And that's what makes the document kind of a live document. And yeah, will help us maybe 5 years down the road, look at the 5 years, work on it and adjust where we need to adjust.
I've never heard that before in terms of schools, but I think that's a really great idea from both of you. If we add the narrative that goes along with it, sometimes in my experience, these become almost like Gantt charts, like done, 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 and you can't learn anything from them. Whereas if we put the narrative, someone can look back and say, well, I think we were a little aggressive here. We could have performed more here. Gives us something to work with at the 4-year mark when we bring the strategic teams together to start over again for the next cycle.
And the other part, it's the feedback loop. So you all did a great job of getting input from everybody on building the strategic plan. By putting the list of activities is to remind everybody that everybody is part of making the strategic plan to be live every year. So it shows everybody where they are fitting in the strategic plan. Where it's working.
That's good. Other comments or questions?
I was just going to comment, the one thing I really appreciate about the strategic plan, it reminded me, especially in light of current issues kind of facing us politically and everything with DEI statements and many organizations now abandoning DEI statements for various reasons. We've incorporated, it's always been embedded into our culture. You look through this, through the strategic plan, it's in each and every focus area. There is a piece of it and that's how we operate. So we were ahead of the game.
Good. Other questions or comments? Okay, so we're going to hear back next quarter? Is it
Yeah,
quarterly?
probably. Well, I try to do quarter, but I'm not in a good timing. So it's either going to be in the spring quarter or maybe very early in the second
Okay,
quarter.
that's good. Let's
Using
keep
the
apprised.
calendar, not the
And
school.
obviously, when that tool is developed, we've talked about, let's get that up and running so we can have more of the real-time reporting out to our community as we go through it. It's a good idea. Item 6.2 on our agenda is the status of the board directives, which came up from last summer out of the yearbook investigation. Dr. Jones.
Correct. Thank you, Bruce. This is the third report we've had on the status of the directives following the yearbook investigation. Our last report was on October 28th. I will note that the rate of completion of the projects is slower than the previous two updates as the administration had to shift its attention to the strategic plan. We had significant curriculum work, sectioning, staffing, and hiring. But nonetheless, there's really important progress being made. And we have, for the most part, we're on plan for the projects we intended to do at this point. We still have some work that's coming that we hope to have done by the end of the school year. Just to highlight through some of the big changes, going by directive, directive number 1, as an update, the job descriptions for the student media advisors were completed. Remaining is a collaborative analysis of the co-curricular programs, both course, that would be programs where both the course and the activity are combined into a program. And then we want to align them to core values of the district. Dr. Romano is leading this work with the sponsors and will complete it later this year when critical hiring has been completed. She's going into one of her busiest times of the year. I guess August is your next busiest. So directive number 2, all those directives were completed prior to the October 28 report. On directive number 3, and I didn't write down them by name, and I apologize because that would be helpful. As noted in the previous 2 updates before tonight, the remaining activity tied to teacher evaluation is an ongoing project on teacher evaluations. We've added more training. And so this training, thank you, Bruce. This particular training will likely be done in mid-June. Our next training is due on, begins on March 8th.
Just use your fingers.
Too old school for that. Our next board directive is professional development for all employees on understanding sensitivity regarding hatred and bigotry. The training of the staff is continued with an added module to our normal staff training. Staff are responsible for reviewing that module by March. And we're waiting on racism-free schools training that was supposed to be delivered by the Department of Human Rights. We wanted to use the one provided by the state, and it hasn't arrived yet. And I'm not sure how far overdue it is. And Dr. Romano, do you recall?
If I recall correctly, it was due in August 2024. So we are just waiting for the release of that training so that we can put it in place, but we haven't heard anything as to if it's going to be released anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. The cabinet and the building administrative teams, that's the principal and the associate principals and the assistant principals, will begin SEED training in April. We'll have 5 sessions of training with SEED. That's understanding our own perspectives, understanding perspectives of others. So we'll have 5 sessions on that this year, and then we'll have 5 sessions next year. Those haven't been scheduled yet because we want to look at some of our meeting calendars before we dive into next year's schedule. Moving to directive number 5, which is review contracting and purchasing practices. The request for proposals for diploma printing, regalia, and yearbook services has been distributed, and we should see them in an upcoming meeting, next month. Directive number 6, which is review conflict of interest policies. All of those were completed prior to October 28th. Next, we have Directive 7, which is evaluate assessment and grading practices. Since our last update, the dashboard report shared updates on our syllabi and curriculum map work with the board. The board has been introduced to the finalized 25-26 course guide, which is currently in use. And additionally, key policies were reviewed and approved minutes ago in fulfillment of this particular directive. So that one will be largely completed. I'm looking real quickly for what's to come. We still have quite a bit of work there, ongoing work. It's underway, but it should be done by the end of this school year. And then finally, no, not finally. Next is Directive 8, which is assess evaluation practices with extracurricular staff. This project has been started. It's too early to say it's a rough draft at this point, but they have some important stuff on paper already that I've had a chance to look at. With the appointment of the new assistant principal for athletics, we'll probably put this on ice for a little while so she can be involved in that process as well. So we have a diversity of opinions and work on that evaluation tool. Then finally is the last one, which if you'll recall, we added late, which was assess policies and procedures for means to enhance student and staff safety. 2 policies tied to student safety were completed in December, and then remaining in spring are some additional policies and safety reviews that we need to do. We'll have in a closed session to come some review of our safety practices yet this spring. Okay, that wraps up the most recent update of the board directives.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. Board members, any questions or comments? Mr. Galecki?
So you referenced a couple of ones that, due to competing responsibilities, all kind of hitting the fan at the same time, so to speak. Any additional external resources that we could approve or provide to help get those back on track?
The issue we're having is it's the same staff doing
Right.
everything. And so right now, we're particularly in a point where the administrative team is, I'm worried about them getting enough sleep. So it is really, we're at a point right now is probably the most hectic with the biggest impact on our experience for next school year. I think as we get through the next 2 months, we'll be able to make some ground in some places.
As you're reviewing that, give some consideration if there's temporary help that can offload some of the routine work, so to speak, some focus. Sounds like this is an area where it requires that experience and know-how of how things happen in the district. But if there's something to take some of the pressure off the pipe,
Yeah.
so
We'll-
so folks can sleep and do
Thank
this
you.
right.
Yeah, we'll definitely look for those opportunities. I'm sure Barb would love it if I found someone else who could do sectioning and staffing for us. We'd love, boy, there's an opportunity for someone who's entrepreneurial is to do sectioning and staffing for schools.
Sounds
But
like a DECA
that's where we're
opportunity,
at
maybe.
right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You might have a retiree that might be interested.
I point out Barb for that, Dr. Georges for that, because she has really been instrumental in our systemization of our sectioning and staffing and hiring process. The whole team's been working on it, but that's an area of leadership that Dr. Georges brought to the whole district, and we're really thankful for it. However, it is one stressful time. So, but by and large, we're making really good pace. Where we're a little slow, I think is completely understandable. A couple of the projects still to come that are underway is in curriculum instruction. I think as we had 4 there, and as you've seen, Ryan and Laura are working really hard on those. So I feel good about the progress we're making.
But just keep that in
Across the
mind
board.
as opportunities to let the pressure out.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions, Ms. Mullenbeck?
I did have a question about number 4 in table 4B. Dr. Johns had mentioned this is an ongoing activity number 3, that the seed trainings have been commenced and will be ongoing, but is there any resolution or have you had any feedback from the DOJ about the availability of their programming?
Yes, they're available. We're just trying to match up our schedules.
Okay.
So it's still desired. We have some dates that we have tentatively provided for. Thank you. I forgot all about this. We tentatively provided them some dates. We're working back and forth on those dates a little bit, but thanks for mentioning
Yeah,
that.
I think that's great. And I especially want to be sure that we involve, it sounds like this training that's going on right now is more for staff,
Yep.
but we want to make sure our students are
Yep.
included in this. So I don't want to lose
Yep.
those opportunities for them to speak to. They're going to inform us better than anyone what
Yes.
they're feeling and seeing in the schools.
Absolutely. I think that'll be very valuable. I just need to get us those dates nailed down. So thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Nope, nope. Okay. This is important work that's been going on since August. Thank you for keeping that up simultaneously with the strategic plan. A lot of these are big items, and making sure that our schools are inclusive and we're not in any way or respect fostering or in any way not looking attentively enough at bigotry. We have to keep that focus. There are multiple directives, multiple things, but the part about the bigotry and making sure that we're doing proper oversight with our staff, those are among the more important ones in there. So thank you for being on top of all that. Very much important. Item 6.3 on our agenda is the District 34 True North withdrawal request. Dr. Johns?
Thank you. This is an item we talked about in the past. I brought it to the board at our last meeting, and we kept it on discussion action in case some questions came up over the intervening 2 weeks. I've had no questions. I guess on an update, I'm hearing from there's 18 members of True North in the special ed cooperative. District 34 is one of them. So they're waiting for votes from 17 of the other member boards. To date, I've confirmed with a couple superintendents that they've had positive votes. I'm checking because I've heard a rumor that there is a district that has voted in
And this is a
opposition.
one strike rule, just to remind.
Yeah, I haven't confirmed that. That particular district, which I'd rather not say, has not posted their minutes yet, but we'll check that out. They have opted for the process of going through a consensual withdrawal. There's 2 different timelines. And at this point, I don't know where they're going to head if it's not approved. But ultimately, what we're asking for is we certainly show our support for one of our sender districts, our largest sender district, who is using none of their services, but is spending about $500,000 a year just in membership fees. So open for any questions that may have materialized, but I certainly recommend a vote tonight in favor of District 34's request.
And our timeline, just so we keep that in mind, is the 60 days. That's why we're moving to the vote tonight, because we're now in, I think, the second half of that. Or
Yeah, I think so. It came in late December.
Yeah, but February 18th sticks in my mind. Mr. Glackley, something you
I
wanted
was
to
going
offer?
to say, I wanted to, I guess, make sure we're looking at this from our perspective. This petition is, I know while District 34 is one of our feeder schools, we're considering this from our perspective and what does it impact to our programs, our students, and our future ability to serve those students and everything as well too. So with that in mind, I guess my first question is, what is our membership fees at currently? And what is the anticipated increase? Again, I believe I asked it before, but I think I wanted to refresh her, see if you got any more details.
So I'll just ballpark some. We're looking currently at, just in membership alone, we're looking at $600,000 a year. And that's outside of any tuition or any purchase services. that we get from them. We're anticipating soon that we'll be put on about an 11-year schedule of payments for their facilities and their capital upgrades that would cost us over $100,000 a year on top of that.
So 700,000 to $750,000.
Yeah. And that's prior to, I have two more numbers to add to it.
Okay.
So on the tuition side, I haven't seen what they're projecting for enrollment increases, but on the tuition side, I just did the math during the facilities committee. We're looking at 6% increases pretty much across the board. So I might anticipate that enrollment cost goes up 6% too, which brings us up another $36,000. And then with all of that, I haven't added the 13.5% increase we're likely to see with District 34's withdrawal.
What was the-
13, I'm sorry,
13.5.
13.5 in what? Everything across the board? Sorry.
Everything on membership.
Got it.
13.5% is what
Yeah.
you, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just doing some quick back of the envelope.
So I think we're getting close to $1 million.
So that's another 100,000. So you're looking at $100,000 increments. We're getting, to your point, close to $1 million.
Yeah.
With these additions and everything. So based on that, how have we leveraged our membership? How do we have enough details to understand, are we utilizing this these services to their fullest?
So, yeah, as a member of the Leadership Council of True North, we see the great things that True North does on a daily basis for their students. We have very few students, and we have even fewer that will be a part of that program next year. So as everyone knows, we're removing our transitional skills students or students who receive transitional skills from their program. We will probably have no other students except maybe one or two will leave in there because of the transition will be hard for them, but we'll have no students being served by their programs. We may get a little bit of purchase services from them because they're there. We could find other ways of getting those purchase services. So we're going to be almost in the same situation as District 34, where we're not using True North for services, but we're paying a pretty large membership fee.
And I was going to say, it looks like we're paying $1 million, yet we're still serving our students with the programs here and the costs associated with that, which are probably more akin to the
Yeah.
600,000 that we've been paying in membership fees and everything.
And like, I'll just add, Mr. Glauke, that one of the services that they offer, which is part of our general fee, is professional development, but that is not something, we do almost all of that in-house.
Right. They have some great professional development that they offer that's pretty popular. It just doesn't match up with all the work that we're doing in the strategic plan. So we go elsewhere for that. And then when necessary, use our internal people for the PD. But some of the PD, for example, the high yield practices that we'll be introducing in March, that's not part of their,
But
it's part of their offering.
I guess
their
to
menu.
simplify, we're not utilizing, let's say, 600,000 worth of
No, not at
professional
all.
development annually
No, not inclusive.
and subsidizing it with something I would imagine under 100,000.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So in terms of, I guess, some of the factors, I appreciate District 34 going through this because they started outlining a number of the factors that they evaluated when they were looking to transit. Do any of those factors align with our areas of concern and how our programs are shaping up?
Yeah, I think there's a really good match between the principles utilizing the decision-making by 34 and our same set of needs. We need the resources. We need the resources to educate our students within our own programs that we feel better match the needs of our students. Moving our transition students from Highland Park to Northbrook have multiple advantages. And everyone else's we're taken care of. We've included those students within our own programs, which is in their best interest. So I think we match up really well with what District 34 has done. I would acknowledge that District 34 has been working in this direction longer than we have, but we're maybe a year behind them.
I was going to ask, in light of that, to me, it just doesn't sound like we're getting the best value for the dollars spent. They can be utilized much more effectively and efficiently with our control and our students served better as in the community that they will be growing up and most likely working in subsequently and everything. And was going to ask, what would it take to begin evaluating this in more detail? Could we start this spring?
Sure, we would have, I'm glad you asked that question. So the timeline is similar to what District 34 did, where they would have to announce through board resolution by the end of May that they wanted to conduct a self-study. They would have a third-party evaluator come in and evaluate the question, which is, can the district educate these students? Which we know we can because we have been. And that is required either through the True North process or through the state's process, which is different. It's a little faster. And so we would have to announce that in May in accordance to the True North Articles of Agreement. And depending on the results of that study, we would decide in December to give True North enough time that we wanted to make a change if we wanted to withdraw from True North.
Yeah, I would encourage the board, but that the board direct the administration to begin that evaluation process. So we could come back in May and have
On a timely basis.
have a full discussion on this, understand the timeline, the costs, the implications.
Sure. If it's okay, I'd probably break up the discussion in a couple meetings this spring so I can put the
That's fine.
timeline on paper, so I can put together some of our costs on paper and then do a vote in advance of that deadline.
No,
Oh,
appreciate that.
Thank you for the questions, and we can elaborate that when it becomes its own agenda item to bring us back to the 34 requests. What you're asking us tonight to do is to take a vote to approve the withdrawal. And I see if others have any questions first. Though, any other comments or questions? Ms. Siegmund.
Just one clarification to Pete's point. I thought we had already done some of that initial research and investigation into our potential withdrawal.
We've been
Okay.
monitoring this for some time. If you'll recall, I've lost track of time. 3 years ago, Dr. Pearson came and presented to the board
Yeah.
the roadmap that has brought us to this point. And so in that process, it wasn't for sure we're going to withdraw, but it was putting us in a place that would certainly be a question that should be asked.
Right.
And it led us to where I'm really pleased where we're at now, where we will next year have all of our students directly under our umbrella.
Mhm.
And I think that's good for them. I think it's good for our community. And so I think the natural next step is to ask the big question, should we control our own resources and direct them towards these students? Because we can do a lot with the
Mhm.
resources.
Okay, yeah, because I just recall a lot of these meetings that we discussed,
Mhm.
what the impact would be
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
the district and to the kids and everything. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Siegmund. Dr. Steinberg.
Just one comment to your point, Bruce. We are discussing today District 34.
Yeah.
I would appreciate if we bring this back at another time. So I know this may impact only a small number of our community, but to get people to get involved or submit their comments, if we're gonna we went through this when we changed the way GBOC, I think, or the off-campus was working, where after we made the decision, some people started showing up, explaining their impact to them. I shouldn't say I think we all, but from what I heard, I think we may be on agreement of what we want to do, but it would be important to separate it, let people.
No, we'll do it
think about
deliberately.
it, bring it
Do
another
it
time.
deliberately.
Certainly in the spirit of transparency and listening to our community. I will let you know, and we do need to go back to the 34 question. Some of that work has already begun
Okay,
in anticipation. I wouldn't say that we have completed that objective, but we have started it. So.
Great.
And to reframe my questions in line of questioning, it's concerns over, well, how many members are currently in the co-op? And how many do they anticipate? Do they have anybody that they're just going to join? Because going back to, are we going to be the last one on the ship? At the end of the day, it's not 600 or $1 million that we're supporting, but we're supporting the entire co-op is what I'm concerned about
So-
and not getting any value out of it.
Right
No,
now,
I'm not disagreeing with that. I think along your line, my point was like,
you just want to have
somebody who
community.
wasn't aware that we were going to be talking about this today and just heard we
No,
paying $1 million will come out of the woodwork and say, what are you guys doing about this?
No, it'll be done deliberately. And I will just say to that, just to clarify, there are 18 members. And right now there are 18 members and there's one that's trying to leave in
Okay.
terms of
And
the
there's-
ship.
And we're not aware of anybody trying to
They're,
join.
they're now in the process of developing procedures for possible other districts to join as members. It's been in committee. I sit on finance, and it's been in finance because it's a complicated financial question.
So that's my concern in terms of how much are we going to be holding on to
No, it's
with District 34 in mind?
right now, that is that only district trying to get off the ship. Okay, so that being said, do you want to say something else before we go to the vote?
No, I think the vote is appropriate.
So I'll entertain a vote is approve the petition. What do we?
To approve the resolution to allow
Resolution.
District 34 to withdraw from True North
Okay.
Educational Co-op.
You might have to wordsmith that a little bit afterwards, but I move that the board approve the resolution for District 34 to withdraw from the co-op as second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Ms. Mullenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Mr. Doughty,
Yes.
6 members voting yes.
Thank you very much, and all the efforts that going into this. There's a lot of folks have been working on this for a long time. Our final item on the regular agenda is an enrollment forecast update for 24-25. Dr. Johns.
Thank you. This is an area where we have really grown as a district over the past couple of years, where we monitor the development in our two communities, but we've increased the quality of our tools to better understand the impact of different developments in our community. This is work that Dr. Gravel has led, not only for our district, but for the entire township, and has brought a much higher degree of specificity, a higher level of science, if you will, to understand the impact on enrollment that happens with property sales, property development. And Dr. Gravel is going to give us an update on some of the development projects and how they impact our students, but also what we're looking at in terms of growth for the district. Dr. Gravel.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. I'm going to begin by just referencing within your packets as well as available to our community members, there are 2 documents. I'm going to start by one that's a traditional district memo, and then I'll get into a larger statistical analysis that is included as your second document. So regarding the district memo, this document identifies that for the past approximately 11 years, the school district has engaged in a very consistent method for planning, predicting, if you will, the number of students that we will be servicing next school year, as well as many years as we can statistically predict with reliability, which is about 10 years. There are 2 methods that we use. One is referred to as a population forecast. And this is an external analysis prepared by Dr. Jerome McKibben. He's actually one of the former demographers for the state of Indiana. And he utilizes a wide range of data, includes live birth data, the number of real estate transactions within our service area, new developments, as well as current enrollment of the high schools, as well as our sender school districts. The second approach we utilize is referred to as a cohort survival calculation. This is very common across all school districts. It's one of those methods that you actually learn as you're becoming an administrator and going through your coursework. And it relies upon students in general, cohorts, going from freshman year to sophomore year to junior year, and so on and so forth. We actually go all the way back to kindergarten with all of our elementary feeders, with a factor that assumes X amount of students may have attrition, X amount of students may move into the district, and so on and so forth. And if you look at table 3, it actually gives you a little bit of insight in terms of the differences between them. So if we just look at the 25-26 school year at a district level, the difference between the population forecast and the cohort survival is that the population forecast anticipates 14 more students than the cohort survival. Interestingly, as you proceed forward, those numbers might substantially increase. What has remained tried and true for the district, however, is that Dr. McKibben's population forecast is extremely significantly sound. At the end of the day, from a statistical standpoint, we tend to only be 1 or 2% off on our projections. And we can see that in table 1 on that first page, where back in October 2024, we anticipated at Glenbrook South that we would be serving 2,139 students. Forgive me, October 2023. And in October 2024, we actually were serving 2,112 students, so a difference of 27. Now let's travel over to Glenbrook South. We estimated we would serve 2,922 students, and we ended up serving, as of October 1st counts, 2,923 students, 1 student off, which is pretty typical within our margins. As we look on a very macro level, we are seeing a overall over the next 10 years decline in student enrollment. Or will we? And that'll get into some other data that we'll look at in a moment. But based on, Dr. Georges has some thoughts on that. Based on the current analysis and the known projects and known developments, we are seeing that decline. What's very unique, and we've talked about this for the past 2 years, is we're starting to see Glenbrook North increase its enrollments with Glenbrook South declining its enrollment. And we see a little bubbles here and there, and that's just based on our elementary feeder data that we're seeing and we're monitoring. But we don't see any massive shifts in enrollment based on our forecast until we get closer to 2029, going into 2030 and 2031, where again, we see that back and forth between increasing one building and decreasing in another. I mentioned that we've had very good success looking at 1 year out, so we're fairly confident to say next school year, we will see a bit of an uptick in student enrollment going from 50-35 to 50-43 overall. And you'll see how that balances out within the schools. Where everything kind of gets put on pause or we need to look at additional data comes to that second report. And I really only want to point out or spend a lot of time on one page, and I'm going to direct you to that, and then I'll talk a little bit. And that is page 21, and it is titled Development. When I first started in my position as assistant superintendent in 2016, I remember the first development meeting I was brought into had to do with the Green Acres Country Club. And I use that as an example because I sat through one meeting, and about 2 years later, I sat through a different meeting. In Dr. Johns' first year, I recall sitting in another meeting, and none of those developments came to fruition. And I remember watching the news to learn that that particular development had actually been purchased by DuPage Water Reclamation Agency, and it is no longer seeing any residential development. I use this as an example to say every development is very much in tentative form until it is actually approved, ground is broken, and we see significant work. Because we can even see ground broken on a project, such as a development that we were experiencing across from Plaza del Prado, and construction stops. So put that out there. On the page 21, you'll notice the developments that we have been informed of through the villages and have attempted to project out how many students will result from those developments to the very best of our ability based on the information we know. One of our community members this evening talked about the what's affectionately referred to as the Pearson Project. The Pearson Project, located at 1900 East Lake Avenue, originally was very, dense, multifamily housing units, if you will. And we were looking at, I vaguely recall, 3 times the amount of enrollment projections than we see in the current proposal. Another development that was talked about this evening was a Signo development. And actually, it came up in our finance committee this evening where there was a potential that we might be able to benefit from parking, a parking expansion in the Signo development. And right now, the Signo development is entirely on hold, to the district's knowledge. And so based on what we know, if you didn't notice, I have a lot of the asterisks put on there. You'll notice that page 21 identifies the number of students that we project at the K-5 level, what we traditionally refer to as primary and intermediate levels, the middle or junior high school level for 6-8, and then the high school level for 9-12. What's very special about the study that you see in front of you is that the study is not performed by the village or its associated developers that they're working with on projects. Alternatively, all school districts come together. So that includes District 27, 28, 30, 31, and 34, and 225. And we share all of our student demographic data. So an address for every student, then we count how many students are there, and so on and so forth. We provide that to an external demographer, and what they're doing is they're identifying how many students actually come from single-family homes versus attached residences like townhomes versus multifamily dwellings like apartment and condo buildings and so on and so forth. And we're able to get a statistical measure that we call a student yield. And that yield is developed on a per district standpoint. So the yield that comes from District 34 might be very different than the yield that's associated with District 27 in Northbrook. And that can also fluctuate based on the type of housing that's being used. But that student yield allows us to vet every proposal given to us by the developer. And this is important because there are 2 trends that our school district has identified that we need to closely monitor. Trend number 1 is developers, in our experience, have understated the amount of high school students that will be resulting from the property. And then sometimes they overstate the number of elementary students that will come in a property. The other thing we've identified is developers will attest and present in public hearings that a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment will not yield students. And we know from our own internal analysis, what you're looking at, that is not our reality. And so there's assumptions that you will only see high school students if you see a larger 2 or 3 or 4 bedroom dwelling. And so we use this report to vet those development proposals and then provide feedback back to the village. Now, this important topic that I do want to make sure I get a little board feedback on. From when I started in the district, we utilized a benchmark. Candidly, there's developments happening every single day. Some might be a single home that's being knocked down and a new one being built. Other times it's subdivisions or larger areas. It's always been our practice that if in our calculations, we're not going to see a swing of enrollment of more than 20, that administration works with the village, provides feedback. And in essence, we've taken the position that we support economic growth from an industrial and commercial standpoint, as well as residential growth. And again, 20 has been our number, but perhaps that number should be lower. I would advise that a threshold is important. Otherwise, ultimately, the board will be presented all of this. And the candid reality is we don't have a lot of feedback. We have the ability to provide general feedback to the village. And that's shared with the petitioner, but we don't see a lot of action based on our feedback. Unless, again, we have had good, positive response when there are large impacts to the school. So I do want to talk about, is there a certain threshold that the board would like more routine updates as opposed to our annual update that you're hearing tonight? The second item I just wanted to share is the Village of Glenview has agreed to begin working with school districts to review what we call impact fees. Let's make sure we all have shared understanding of impact fees. When a new property comes online, there are no property taxes that the school district is really receiving except whatever a base value of EAV was. And so there's a year that generally takes for a property to come on the roll that impact fees are intended to provide support financially so that the school district has the resources it needs to support the students that result from that property. But the impact fee amounts are very low compared to the operating costs per pupil. And so the Village of Glenview has expressed interest in gathering together its school districts, park district, library, and so on and so forth, to see if the formula, which we typically refer to as a Naperville model, which is based on a mid-90s court case, if that's an appropriate value or if there should be adjustments. We're hoping that we also can have the same conversation with the Village of Northbrook. And just to share another unique element, we also were notified just 3 weeks ago that there's actually a substantial development in the Village of Deerfield behind Deerbrook Mall, which is a very small portion of the high school's district area. And that we were not involved in any awareness, discussion.
Oh, that's going to our district?
That's coming
Okay.
to our district.
We have a sliver between the expressway and south of Lake Cook Road.
Where the bowling alley is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bowling alleys. Yep. And so, so that's another village that we're also looking to partner with. So all that to say, let's kind of get out of the data and go for the big takeaways. Our school district enrollment remains relatively stable with a projected decline in overall enrollment over the next 10 years. South coming down, north increasing in enrollment a little bit, still having a difference between the two. The methodology we are confident in based on, again, a 13-year historical look back that shows us within just about 1%, if not less. But with that said, large housing developments will have an impact on what these numbers look like. And that's why it's important for the district to be acutely aware of what's happening. But we always have to acknowledge that even the development information that we've presented before you, it might very well change because the development itself is changing. And then my only big question takeaway that I want to make sure we get to is our threshold has been about 20 students of an impact for development. Is the board so comfortable with that number, or should we look to provide updates on developments at a lower number? So if a development suggests 10 students, then the board should review it and provide feedback in lieu of administration.
How about this? I don't mean to cut you off. Are you still going?
I am done.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's hard to tell. So much is speculative. You could say 20 and it could be 30, 10 years later. We don't have any idea. A suggestion would be is have some sort of periodic report to facilities and finance if it's needed. Or you can put in interstices information items for the board because it is important. It can have effects down the road, which could be years out, or some multi-housing development gets leased up and suddenly it's chock full of 75 high school students. We just can't do that ex ante. So if there's a way to apprise us periodically, I think that's important. I don't know if there's a magic number. Others may feel different about that, but I just keep us surprised because obviously it goes to how we staff, how we finance the district, and how we manage our facilities. I don't hear you saying are we going to change the property lines for the schools, what we went through years ago? We're not even in that ballpark, which is, positive for lots of reasons. But keeping our eyes on this obviously is critically important, but I think at the committee level, it's until it becomes more of an issue, committee level may be the wisest way to keep people informed. That's just my thought. Others' thoughts here? Ms. Segwin?
I have a question related to that. So, and maybe it's a clarification for me. And first of all, thank you for this page on the development of all of the projects going on. It's nice to see it all on one page. Are you tracking all of the developments, or are these just ones that are at a certain size?
This is everything that the district has received correspondence from the village regarding. So there may be well, candidly, there are other developments that we later learn about, but every time the village sends us or municipality sends us information, we send it to our demographer to be included in this chart.
Oh, okay, because I'm just aware of one that's on Dundee Road that's, smaller, but they're building single-family homes there. So just as an example, right, I drive by it every day and I don't see it on here. But so that was just curious to me because I know there are pockets of those types of developments around. Yeah, I think there's like.
Yeah, I mean, is there a standard for the village to tell us stuff? I mean, what is the
Yeah.
village using as their standard? Are they just sort of,
There doesn't appear to be a standard.
could we get a standard?
We can certainly
Could we ask him for like, hey, what is it arise?
Yeah,
Because otherwise this Deerfield one's kind of upsetting.
Yeah, I'm surprised about that. 'Cause
That's
that's
Deerfield,
gonna
so
be,
we're not-
Yeah.
how many units is that supposed to be? Did they say?
They,
100 plus.
Because it's not on this, is it? Right?
no, it's
No,
not on
because
this
yeah,
because it wasn't part of our
Right.
reports that we sent out.
We don't have a relationship with Deerfield
Not yet. Dr. Revelle on occasion is when the Walgreens property changes and the proposals for that space, which are significant, were floated past. Deerfield did reach out to us. I know there's work being done east of that property, but I'm not aware of it. So generally what happens with the villages, it's larger, bigger projects they keep
Right.
us aware of. So for example, the Granger property,
Uh-huh.
so it's the big ones that they tell us about.
Right.
And certainly we meet with them every quarter. And I can put this on the table and say, let's make that scale a little smaller. Sorry for that. We currently probably don't get any updates on property, like if maybe somebody has 3 acres that they've merged and re-subdivided, we probably wouldn't hear about those.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know that there is a threshold, and we can certainly talk about it. I know that the elementary districts are interested in this as well. And it would just add clarity for all of us, kind of like RJ's question of the 20, we can ask the same with the villages.
So I would offer just as a note, that unit has 200 or the development, 254 rental units. And I
Uh-huh.
did get it in this chart. It is the final part, Continental Properties.
Oh, okay.
And just to offer one clarification that I forgot to mention, sometimes on this report, you'll see 0 students on a yield, for instance, for studio apartments. That's because the current census for this year shows 0 students, but we also rely on prior years where we know we have students generating from studio apartments, just offering.
So,
Hey, Pete, can I just
go
want to finish. Because I don't know if everyone's aware, but District 28 has a new, proposal out there
Mhm.
to referendum to raise debt to expand their schools, which is pretty significant. So if this if this development goes as it's supposed to go, it would probably be good timing for that. But the other question I had that is somewhat unrelated to this, we talked about it at the last meeting about the development that the village is trying to do down Shermer Road. I shouldn't say development, but I should say construction. I know you said you were going to the meeting. Did that come up
It's
at
the
all?
Granger,
You're talking about the bike path.
the bike.
Well, the whole beautification thing that's gonna go down Shermer right
that's
by
in-
GBN.
Yeah.
bullets.
Yeah, it was in my board, a memo I wrote to the board.
Oh, was it? I
They're
didn't
putting
see it.
together a bike path that will go on the east side of Shermer.
Okay.
It will cause some traffic concerns from my perspective for
Yeah.
GBN, in that it's currently a 4-lane with a active median in the middle of it, and it will turn into a 3-lane. So there will be traffic concerns on Shermer for sure. I talked to the village manager. They've been very clear with the contractors to be mindful to do the best they can in terms of school traffic. A lot of the work will be during the summer, but it will actually start before the summer.
Okay.
Mr. Glucki.
Yeah, I follow up to your question about, this referendum. What is our capacity at the building physically? Because I see we have two issues with resources. We have
Yeah.
physical limitations with the buildings, and then you have staffing and program issues, which would be and those we can usually ramp up and adjust a little faster than the buildings.
Is it 2,400 or something like
Yeah,
that? Noise?
so ultimately, and we've provided this data in prior years. There's a bunch of different ways to calculate capacity. I'm going to offer a very practical one. Glenbrook South has served in excess of 3,300 students in my time here. Glenbrook North has always hovered around 2,100, 2,200. However, space-wise, Glenbrook North does have more space for capacity. The challenge that we truly face outside of the capacity from the physical standpoint is the fact that the demands and needs of our students have evolved and changed. So for example, as we're preparing staffing for this year, we're identifying that we need to expand our multilingual program at Glenbrook South because we have hit a level with an additional language that requires more teachers by law in that language. And so while our FTE has decreased a bit over time, as more students come in with more diverse and specialized needs, we have the space, but now we will likely need more staff in order to accommodate them.
Right, so that was the second area, and given one of the required courses and programs that we must offer, but then what the Glenbrooks are very well known for is the diversity of
Correct.
all the elective
Excellence across
programs,
academics.
across all
and
the activities,
co-curricular.
across the activities, athletics and everything else, which require, as we get more and more diversified, more and more resources to support that. So yes, these periodic reports, I think is very mindful, but we can act a little faster in my understanding on those initiatives if we cross certain thresholds than on the physical ones, and we don't have to put up
Yes.
temporary facilities as we've seen some of the grade schools and others do around the community and everything. So appreciate that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
It's been a while since I talked mobiles.
I was gonna say.
Stop.
Stop.
Okay.
No mobiles.
Yeah.
Ms. Mullenbeck? No mobiles, by
I
the way.
just want to
Okay.
see if I'm gleaning correctly, that we don't really have a whole lot of input with respect to the villages. So the gentleman who came today and said that he wasn't happy with what our role was in terms of the Pearson development, would we really have much more of a role?
Well, what I think the most important element that Mr. Sykes brought up, not to prioritize one or another, is the fact that the village had already proceeded forward with a proposal through a commission process before we had all of the information at our fingertips. And so it is important, to Mr. O'Hara's comment, that we establish an understanding that this information needs to be brought forward to us, whether it's a small impact or a large impact. In terms of actual candidly, about 4 years ago, we used to bring forth property tax incentives called 6Bs before the board because the villages at the time requested a letter of support to include for the county's consideration. That's no longer requested because the reality is it's a municipal function where the board through itself or a spokesperson or through the superintendent would have benefit is we can attend on the board's behalf and share our disagreement with the proposal. But the actual decision is completely outside of the school district's hand.
And to clarify, I'm sorry, just to go off of the topic, you reminded me of a point. So we are then looking at this 287 is when we go into those village meetings and everything, do we agree with, this is the impact to the district, not any other piece of that property, traffic, what it means and everything? Did their specialists come up with the same number we did?
Correct.
Okay.
The only difference in recent time that I want to comment on is the Signo development. We did go very deep into the concerns of traffic, student safety, crossing the street. And the village was extremely open to that dialogue. But typically we're focused on student
But
generation.
that's driven by its location.
Correct.
Being directly across the street. And I also, the threshold question, I realize is a different question, but just looking at this, Pearson, based on this is our analysis, our demographer's analysis, that's 18 students is what they're saying will be high school students. So I don't know that the village thinks it's going to impact us that much. If we're going to,
Our problem is
the
the
thresholds might be
accumulation.
different versus what we need to be involved in versus what the villages need to inform us of. They shouldn't necessarily be the same, is my point.
Especially if they're setting the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, we say that they always set it low, and so if they're gonna set it and they say, oh, well, it was lower than your number, it could be an issue. So maybe we go pretty low on our numbers with them.
Yeah, I think so, because it does seem like we're
And-
not
and cumulative-
finding out about stuff in a timely
Our
way.
own notification threshold and then the notification for the board threshold, for lack of better. terms.
Correct.
Right,
Yes,
so
two different
Because
thresholds.
we're looking at a cumulative effect.
Right.
It's 18 here, 5 there, but that's
Right,
all of a sudden we're up to
exactly right.
287.
That's
And
an issue too.
now it's an issue. They're looking at one development at a time, and has been my experience.
Well, okay, so what I would suggest is if you could put together a proposition based on feedback. I'm sorry, Dr. Steinberg.
Couple of points. I switched my order because of Pete's comments, actually. I think this is good, but the timelines are different between the demographic shift and the physical shifts. Because if there's heavy construction, we get years of waiting until these things happen. However, I think somebody mentioned, we got an influx of Mongolian families recently. Those things happen, I wouldn't say overnight, but happen way faster than having new construction. So it kind of like complementary report to this one should be the one that talks about scheduling and scheduling needs, because those have a larger impact on our budget right now than the physical impact, because we can know that in 3 years or 4 years, we may get an extra 20 students, but right now you may need an extra 20 sections because our demographics have changed. In this case, I'm using the Mongolian students, but it could be anything that changed our demographics, our need for more special needs students and more support in the classroom. So I think those two things have to go in tandem, because otherwise it seems like and I know we don't do this, but it seems like we're only looking at who's building and what the impact is going to be in terms of more students. We may have the same number of students, but our requirements and costs may go significantly higher. Now, going to my first 2 points, question number one is, are any of these developments asking for tax, what is TIF or anything like that?
6Bs or something like that, tax breaks?
No, from a residential standpoint, it really, in our experience, would only be a TIF. And none of these areas are TIFed with the exception of Northbrook Court. Northbrook Court is a TIF.
So my second point would be,
Bless you.
when you talk about metrics and everything else, on a quick look, it seems like in theory, we get a 10% based on the number of units. So we get 1 student per every 10 new units. So for every 10 new taxpayer units, we'll get 1 taxpayer that's also a consumer of our request. So it will be interesting. We have projected 2995 new units, and we have projected 287 new students. So while it's true that we get more expenses, in theory, the taxpayer base expands. So the question is, not only are we getting more students, are we potentially getting more resources? Because these units may be paying more taxes than the previous thing that was there was paying. A logical question that a taxpayer that is currently in the district may ask is, I know it will bring more expenses, but maybe it alleviates part of our expenses because now we are getting more of the share of taxes that we are getting regularly with what we have.
Yes, it can. Here's an example of where, based on the projections we provided, we don't see that same effect. So the Continental Properties Development, which happens in the village of Deerfield, you're at approximately 20 students, and the 5-year property tax impact was projected at about $900,000. So now you divide that out, and you're not necessarily generating your per tuition cost for each student being generated. Again, the challenge you face is, and this is the argument developers will also make. Developers will make the argument that they use conservative figures because even though your yields might show that, you don't know who's going to move in until the units are leased or purchased. And one of the things that we've talked about as a township is doing a better job of tracking developments over a period of time based on what the developer said and what we actually experienced. I think only Mr. Shine might recall this, but when the Glen was first developed, there was a substantial difference in student population, meaning we saw a huge influx at all levels, especially at the elementary level, which is part of District 34's challenge that they're still navigating, compared to what a developer suggested would move in.
Okay, any other comments or thoughts? So what I'd suggest is if you could develop whatever level proposal you need. These forecasts have implications for facilities, they have implications for staffing, they have implications for finance. There's short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and there's coordination issues with villages and other districts, which is a heck of a matrix, I just said, and I'm sure I'm missing 90% of it. But if you could develop something that's on top of whatever you already do, and then to the extent you need input, I'd start at the committee level. And then as you need input, please bring it to the board and keep us informed. I would say quarterly or semi-annually, whatever you think is appropriate. Or if you get some sort of groundbreaking news like, hey, 500 units are going to drop next year because they're dropping mobile units down, we need to know that immediately. But your judgment's good on that.
We'll bring that forward through finance.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for all the work on this. This is an incredibly important area, and it's grown, as you say, beyond the fantastic demography we've gotten from our two methods over the years. Dr. Johnson, anything you want to add?
No, thanks for this discussion. It's really important because it's the long-term health of our district. So it's important that we have this conversation periodically.
Thank you. Item 7 on our agenda is review and summary of the board meeting. We began with celebrations as go back far enough. We used to do this prior to COVID. We'd celebrate all the time. You may remember Dr. Gravel. And it always, I tell you personally, was always one of my favorite parts of the meeting, if not the favorite part. So I'm glad to hear that return. We celebrated the bringing on to our administrative team higher up, Dr. Vasilopoulos, and then we've added Ms. Tomlinson, and Ms. Moritz is also an internal promotion as well. Very excited about those appointments. We heard about special recognition of Mr. O'Malley in math and science. We heard about the continuing fine work in athletics, from wrestling to POMS to our Glenbrook United Special Education League work. Activities continue to run a huge gamut of elective workshop for our 8th graders, mock trial teams, the Illinois Music Educators Association's state conference. We now have a student on a mental health board at the national level. Our DECA and speech teams continue to excel as they have for years. We also had an important statement from Dr. Johns regarding immigration status and our continuing efforts in those regards. And then also, as Mr. Galecki pointed out, just reviewing the number of community events that are ongoing right now to continue to interact with our community, which are very important. We had 4 different visitors who addressed us on fiscal impact studies as we just finished up in terms of property, as well as student resource officers. We heard Also about the forum and the work of the Muslim Civic Association. We heard also about immigration status as well and other fine points of excelling in the Glenbrooks from our four speakers and much appreciated again for their showing tonight. We passed our consent agenda without adjustment. Our four regular items were a strategic plan update, which will come back to us in the next probably 3 to 4 months at the appropriate time, but lots of work being done there on many fronts. We had status on the board directives. We'll get an update on that, presumably in a few months as well as we continue to do important work in that area. We did pass the resolution for giving our consent to the District 34 True North withdrawal request upon discussion. And finally, we had a discussion of the enrollment forecast, but now looking much more broadly about notice of developments and tracking that in a way that makes the best short, medium, and long-term sense for our district. Item 8, possible topics for future board meetings. Please do raise those with me or Dr. Johns. I'd be happy to entertain those. Item 9 is closed session. We do have closed session tonight. I'll entertain a motion to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel with the public body to determine its validity. Security procedures and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting pursuant to sections 2C1, 2C8, and 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 10 after 9. You want to take practice next time around? I have not.
Why would you be against that? Sorry.
I tried to figure it out because I think it's a two different things, so I don't know which one was the.
I know.
One to talk about the change of contract.
Well, 2024.
So
Too much
something
shows.
changed.
Okay.
In terms of the service that they can do or they come up with, I have no idea. Mentioned he was against police being in the building. And not every SRO is.
I didn't say that.
Of course, they're not active, but some of them are active, but it's often something like retired ones. It's sad that we cannot ask. What did you mean with that?
I know, I was confusing. I was like, what is?
But I think RJ talked to him, so you maybe would check. There's a lot of people who have issues with too many police officers inside of the building, not in the building, inside. But in that case, I don't think, I think we have one on each building.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like.
And normally they are very friendly. Many years ago, I went to, so my sons, both of my sons used to play soccer. I went on a trip to St. Louis with another dad and we pushed me on the kids. And their dad turned out to be an SRO, which at the time I didn't know what an SRO was. So we shared like 4 days talking about it. He was talking to me about how he originally started as a police officer, but he realized he wanted to work in schools because he felt that on one hand he was a security person, but on the other hand he was more of like talking to students and mentoring some people. He saw it on a different.
I was talking to one of my colleagues who lives in Texas. Did I tell you this story?
No.
She lives in Texas and
And Mr. Dowdy, we are back.
We are back in open session. We move now to item 10, which is possible action regarding topics discussed in closed session. Item 10.1 is a resignation agreement that we will be taking up this evening. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Glowacki.
I move that that the board approve the resignation agreement that we, with Sotaris Kolodoris, as discussed and closed.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki.
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Yes.
Mr. Dowdy.
Yes.
6 members voting yes.
Item 11 is adjournment. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Time is now 9:15.